Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. This week, I want to talk a little bit about treasure maps, how they were kind of involved in the game in the beginning, original Dungeons & Dragons as it is, how they kind of evolved and where they are now, like how are people using them or are they using them, and frankly, why you probably should be using them. So let's talk about it. The Mapper. For those of you who don't know, I have a second channel, Bandit's Keep Actual Play, in which there'll be a link in the description. But anyways, over there I've been running a solo game for a while, and I call it the Song of the Mapper. And part of the game that I play involves using outdoor survival as a means to kind of establish dungeon locations. And those dungeon locations are designated by treasure maps. The parties then procure the treasure maps and go get loot, right? That's the idea. So I use them quite a bit. And original Dungeons & Dragons, which is the game I'm using to run it, really leans into treasure maps. If we look at their treasure, like where magical treasure comes up that's not specifically listed as like a potion, there's a 75% chance that it's kind of a regular magic item and a 25% chance that it's a map. And that map might go to just treasure, it might go to magic, or it might go to treasure and magic, treasure being gold and such. And this is really interesting because when we jump forward to AD&D, we find that there's a similar table there, but there's only a 10% chance it's a treasure map. And I wondered, I was like, is this getting less and less? I flipped over to AD&D 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Guess what? No treasure maps in the treasure. So that's really interesting. And I'm not exactly sure why it happened, but I can kind of speculate as far as like the direction the game had been going in. And when I say that, I don't mean the direction that people play, because everybody plays differently. My table played differently than other people's tables. I wasn't even playing during 2nd edition, but we do know certain things. During 2nd edition, or the end of 1st edition, I guess, and then really into 2nd edition, we started getting story-based adventures. Let's say in Dragonlance is the one that, sticks out, right? Where there's kind of this idea that they're heroes and they're trying to save the world, as opposed to we're just going to get treasure, right? It's not just a location full of treasure. This would be, maybe in today's vernacular, like event-based gaming or something to that effect, as opposed to like location-based, although that's not 100% accurate. But the idea being is that people were playing the game, because I firmly believe that the game shifts, the actual rule books of the game shift based on how people play the game, not some random person at whoever owns the IP, right? They look at how people are playing and they make adjustments. And I think the game had shifted that way. We certainly played very heroic games. Sure, we went and got treasure and stuff, but we also wanted to save the world and stuff, even in 1982, 83, when I was playing BX. So what does this have to do with treasure maps? The point of the game. So I made a video a little while back where I kind of talked about this a little bit, so I'm not going to dive deeply into it, but I think that the original idea of the game, besides just playing great heroes and stuff, the way that they kind of wanted to establish a win condition, if you will, because again, this was based on war games, was they needed some kind of point system. And the gold was really the points, right? You went into the dungeon and you proved you survived by collecting gold. Gold was experience points, okay? That's kind of, in my opinion, kind of where this all kind of ties together. Now, I like gold for experience points, and there's lots of reasons, and maybe I've even made videos about it, but certainly a lot of people have, about how it motivates people differently and all this other stuff. But forgetting about that for a second, what the treasure map does for you is it gives you a goal, right? It's not the Baron comes to you and they tell you that their son has been kidnapped by bandits and you get them and you'll get a reward and you can be heroes. We have this treasure map. You could be rich if you go get the treasure. It's a different kind of motivation. And the beauty of it is that you find these treasure maps in treasure. So it keeps the game going. If 25% of the big hoards that you find have a treasure map, that's additional adventures that you can go on. And they're built in, right? And here's the beauty of it. It creates player agency. What I like. I'm going to go through a couple of points of what I really like about treasure maps and using them in your game. And then we'll do another section on things maybe that could be problematic, I guess. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But number one, I like that they're a reward and a quest all wrapped in one, kind of what I just said. You go in there, you get the loot from the giant, and in the giant's lair, you find some gold, you find a magic sword, and a treasure map, which then leads you to another adventure. Basically, it's seeded already. It gives you a reason to go back. This is especially true if you're running like mega dungeons. You can put treasure maps that lead to deeper places in the dungeon, that show some of the secret doors and stuff to help them have little hints to get there and go that way. But you can also have them outside the dungeon, right? Or you can have one outside the dungeon they find that sends them to the dungeon. And this, again, will help bounce the players around. And this is not the same as a linear adventure or a railroad, as people might want to call it, or everything like this, because the players get to decide, which is kind of number 2 here. This is agency, right? They find the map based on what they chose to do. And once they have the map, they can go there anytime they want. They could immediately go there, or maybe they have 5 other quests they want to go on. It's kind of like, for lack of a better word, a side quest, but they get to pick their own side quest. They can decide at any point and go, you know what? We have these other things we're doing, but we've got some downtime. Somebody's doing this. You know what? Let's go to this treasure map. Let's see what's there. Because this treasure map says that there's a bunch of gold and we're going to need gold to fund our army to raid this, this area that we need to raid. And I guess number 3, since 3 is a magic number, right, is that it tells the players, and I guess the PCs at that point, that there's other adventurers out there, that there's other things going on in the world. It can be very easy, especially in dungeon crawling type campaigns, to just the players forget about that, right? They're a group of adventurers. They go into a dungeon. Everything they meet, they fight. This is also why encountering other adventuring parties is good. But I know that that can be more complicated for a lot of DMs to set up, so sometimes they don't do it, right? I don't play in that many games that, or haven't been in that many games where we randomly run into another adventuring party, even though lots of YouTubers talk about how that's amazing to have, because it's a lot to run, to think about another party, to have what are they doing, what's their motivations. And when I say that, I don't mean just like 3 fighters and a magic user that you just fight in the hallway and they have no backstory. I'm talking about an actual party. This is a way that you can get that without the confrontation, because you find basically this map on a TPK'd, if you will, party, and this is the treasure. It's like they were following this map, or maybe they made the map. Or perhaps only one person survives from the dungeon, and the treasure map is you find them. You rescue this one person when the rest of the party was TPK'd, and they say, if you take me out of here, I can show you where this big hoard of treasure, we were going there. And now you've got like a human treasure map, right? That can work really, really well. So the idea that you let the players know the world is large, you give them agency into what adventures they can choose, and also the fact that the treasure maps basically continue the adventure without you having to come up with plot lines they have to follow. Those are 3 really solid reasons why I like to use treasure maps. How to use them. So I tried to come up with some things I don't like about treasure maps, but I really can't see the downside. I guess the downside would be that if you constantly have one treasure map lead to another treasure map and they never actually get treasure, but that's just a misuse of how it should be done. Like that shouldn't happen unless you roll really terribly. So, I think that might be the only thing I can think of that would be kind of, and I can imagine too, if you use them, I'll say incorrectly, that is you hand them to a player character and go, this is your quest. You must do this. And there's nothing else to do. Yeah. Okay. But I don't think that's the problem with the treasure map. I think that's a problem with the setup. So let's talk about how to use them in a way that's not going to feel weird and not going to throw off people's agency. The most classic way to find a treasure map, and one of my favorite ways, is to just have it be part of treasure. It's just there. As I mentioned before, they come, they slay the monsters, they destroy the evil lich or whatever, they find that hoard, and they don't just, it doesn't end there like, here we have treasure. It's, oh, and they also have more treasure here. It continues the adventure. So in a standard treasure hoard is one of my favorite ways to just do it. The other way to do it is, and I almost always do this when I create these tables, is I like to have a treasure map on the loot the body tables. The player characters are always finding and engaging in combat with creatures, but they often find, at least in my games, they often find remains of people who have been here before. Again, this makes the world feel like there's more adventures. Finding on an adventurer a treasure map is fantastic, because then you're wondering, what were they doing? Where were they going? Maybe there's notes scribbled on it. Maybe it tells you what the treasure could be. Maybe it's a riddle. Maybe you've got to go somewhere and have Sage look at it. Or maybe it's pretty straightforward where the players can look at it, compare it to their map and go, you know what, this is in this dungeon somewhere because this looks familiar, but I don't know that hallway over there. Maybe there's a secret door. So you can put it right on a body that they find, whether it's something that they fight or like, let's say it's some zombies, right, that got brought up, or a wight, like somebody was turned into a wight because they were killed by one, or a ghoul, or whether it's just remains that they find. So this final way that I'm going to talk about here is where you might get into borderline of players feeling like you're pushing them in one direction, which is to do the quest giver thing. If I was going to do this, I would probably lean towards the idea of the NPC being somebody the players have known for a little bit, and they gain trust, and then eventually the NPC comes through and says, hey, I have this treasure map, and I can't do this now because I'm retired, I'm too old, I don't have the resources, whatever it is. I will split it with you if we go in it together. And I've done this a few times. It's really fun. In fact, there's a Hyperborea scenario that's kind of like this, where the party gets paid by somebody to go into like a desert region and recover some stuff. And in that case, the person is the treasure map. That is to say, they don't have a map. They know the way. And it's kind of that thing. Like, I went there when I was younger and, we left something there and now I want to go back for it kind of thing. This is a good scenario, especially, this is great for conventions, for one-shots, or to start a campaign where you want to start with something a little bit more direct, right? Here is a way to start a campaign by just having a reason for the player characters to be doing something. So that's another good way to do it. So you can do it, just again, this is the one where you got to be a little bit careful about it feeling like you have to do this now, which again can feel kind of linear for some people. So what do you think about treasure maps? I know that it's out there somewhere. I'm going to try to find it. The Judges Guild did a few books on these. Janelle Jaquez created at least one of them, I think the first one, book of treasure maps. And this was in the late 70s, like 78, 79, 80 maybe. So it was already AD&D was there where, only 10% chance of treasure maps, but they were still, players were still using them. And this was actually written for D&D. So the idea of like D&D leaning into treasure maps more so than AD&D is also kind of interesting to me. But I'm going to try to find that. If people are interested in that, I might try to find it and then, maybe take some pictures of it or whatever, and we can maybe go through it and see how they did it, because I'm sure it's amazing if it's Janelle case. So anyways, what do you think about treasure maps? Have you used any of these products that have them? Do you use treasure maps in your game? All that good stuff. Let's get a conversation going. Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check the description here. You're going to find a link to my Discord server. Join the conversation over there. That's like a path to a treasure map. No, that's terrible. Forget I said that. And join it, but forget that terrible sales pitch. Just go join the Discord server. It'll be fun. I'll talk to you soon.